What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Richard on Data, and if this is your first time here, my name is Richard, and this is the channel where we talk about all things data, data science, statistics, and programming. So subscribe for all kinds of content just like this if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. This is another video in my R tutorial series. Many of the videos so far have focused on packages in the tidyverse, with some of the newer videos getting into statistical modeling, because you need to be familiar with the LM, GLM functions, how to exactly run these things, understand what exactly you're getting, and then how do you actually interpret those results. Well, in all these tutorials so far, I've been walking you through R Markdown documents where I've got all my code up here and I've got all my commentary here, but I haven't exactly walked you through R Markdown itself. Now, personally, I'm a huge fan of R Markdown. I like it better than Jupyter Notebooks even, just because it's super easy to use, it's super streamlined, and it just keeps everything that you need. Your code, your results, your commentary, everything all in one place. So what we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to walk through this RMD file. You're going to see exactly how to set up exactly the kind of document that you want to create. You're going to see exactly what the knitted version of this looks like. And then before we break, we are going to look at the R Markdown cheat sheet because it's super easy to use. Definitely something that I encourage you to be familiar with. So before we get started, number one, smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. This code is going to be available on my GitHub repo. As usual, that's going to be linked in the description. I will say with this tutorial, it takes some influence from chapter 27 of the book R for Data Science by Hadley, Wickham, and Garrett, Grolemund, so highly recommend checking that out as well. And then lastly, I'll have a link in the description of this video to my Patreon account, and if you guys would be willing to support me over there, it would be enormously appreciated. Alright, so we're literally going to start here with line number 1. And you'll notice the very first things that we have in this file here are information like your title, author, date, and then this output information. Well, and then all this information is sandwiched between these dashes. So this header at the top is what's known as the YAML header. YAML stands for YAML ain't markup language, which I guess technically it isn't. It's a header. The thing I want to draw attention to actually is this output followed by HTML document followed by code folding show. So I always like concluding with this code folding show thing here because whenever you have code inside of your actual output, you're going to have a hide button on the side so you can toggle once you get your actual knitted file whether you want to show the code or just the results. And you're going to see that when I show you the file here in a little bit. But we start up here with this YAML header. And what you basically have inside of any sort of Markdown document is 3 distinct components. Number 1 is that YAML header. Number 2 are these code chunks. And these are sandwiched between that tilde going on up here. And then you just have your text, which just provides your commentary. Granted, yes, you can provide actual comments on the side over here. Like, I'm going to just type a comment here, and you can provide the commentary that way. But you can actually see the commentary and write it in a sort of way that an audience can digest in report form inside here, outside the code chunks. Then when you want to actually run these code chunks, hit these green play buttons on the side, and then, bam, we're running code. Now, the text is often where you're going to have the most fun here, because in the text, you can utilize Markdown syntax. So I'm going to show you a few examples here of what I tend to use the most. So, for bold text, you can put double stars on each side of the text, or you can put double underscores on each side of the text. For italics, you can use 1 single star on each side of the text or a single underscore. Then for superscript, let's suppose as a superscript, I want to have just a 2. So I basically want this to say superscript squared. Well, I can create a caret symbol on each side of the 2, We're going to see what this looks like in a second here. For subscript, it's a very similar procedure. You can just put a little curly tilde on each side of like a 0. I want the 0 to be the subscript. For strike through text, you can put the double curly tilde here. And then if you want to embed a link, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create brackets here. And now I want the link here to go to www.rstudio.com, but I just want the text here to say link. So just the brackets link on the outside, the actual URL that we're going to after that in parentheses. Now let's actually look at the output here and let's take a look at what this is going to look like. So as promised up here, you've got the YAML header, you've got the name that I gave it, our tutorial 012 R Markdown, Richard on data, followed by the date. And then up here, you have code, show all code versus hide all code. But you can do this individually on each of these code chunks as well. So if I want to hide this, bam, I can do that. And so, as promised with this Markdown syntax text here, I've got bold text and bold text, italics text and italics text, the superscript squared, the subscript not, the strike through text, and then the embedded links, such as this link, which actually goes to RStudio. Now, if you want to create white space inside the document, I typically do this if I'm moving from section to section and I'm using a lot of headers. You can do this BR character with the less than and greater than signs around it. If you want to create a block quote for any reason, you do the greater than sign followed by the actual block quote on a new line. Or alternatively, if you want to create a faint horizontal rule, you can do this triple star sort of thing. Once again, I'm going to go back to the output in a minute here and you get to see exactly what this looks like. But then another thing you're going to want to be familiar with are the headers. And so we're going to create these with the pound signs. And now this is counterintuitive if you're learning Markdown syntax for the first time. But the fewer pound signs that you use, the bigger the header that you're going to create. So 1 is going to give you the biggest, then 2 will give you the second biggest, etc., etc. Now, what's interesting is you can go all the way to the 5th biggest header, and this is still going to look bigger than your actual text. But once you get all the way to 6 pound signs, this header is actually going to be smaller than the text that it's the header of. So let's take a look at this. So again, with our white space, we created that. For the block quote, we actually created that. So if you have some inspiring quote that you want to put inside your R Markdown document, crack your whip. And then this faint horizontal rule, may be a little bit difficult to see, but it's definitely there. Now, as far as the headers are concerned, look, you've got your biggest header, and then it goes all the way down to where you look at the 5th biggest header, and you see it's maybe a little bit bigger than the text that follows it. But the smallest header is definitely a little bit smaller than the actual text here. So just use it if you need to use that for some kind of stylistic purpose. Moving on to some more super fun stuff. So if you want to embed mathematical equations in line, you can do it by simply putting dollar signs on each side of the equation. Now, there's a little bit more syntax that goes behind this, and I'm going to have a link in the description to a nice cheat sheet and reference for this kind of thing, particularly as it comes to creating things like your alpha or your beta characters or things like that, which happen in statistics all the time. But you'll notice if I drag my cursor around this, it's going to show as it's eventually going to display. Everybody's familiar with this equation, E equals m times c squared, so I put it in here as an example. Something amazing that you can also do is embed the output of R code in line as well. And you can do this with this character on each side of the thing that you want to get outputted. So again, you'll see it when I go back to the document and show you the output here. But in the sentence, I want to say, for example, the mean is so-and-so. Well, what it's going to do when this document knits, This code here, mean of the empty cars data set, the HP variable specifically, that's going to get evaluated, and that's going to show up directly inside of this paragraph. So this is going to save you a ton of time if you're creating some kind of report and you have to run it all the time with different numbers, or your data is changing all the time. Definitely get used to using this syntax, because it is going to save you hours and hours of your life. You can create lists and tables. So for instance, let's say I want to create an unordered list. I'm going to create stars up front. So I'm going to have item number 1 is an unordered list. I'm going to follow with item number 2, and then I'm going to indent with a tab, do plus sub item 1 to sub item 2. Alternatively, maybe I want to do number 1 ordered list, number 2 item number 2, followed by sub item 1 and sub item 2. I can do a syntax like that. And then if I want to create an actual table, so this is not based on any data or anything, I just want to create this using just pure Markdown syntax, you can do it in this sort of fashion. You create your headers, space them out, create your content cells, and just do it like that. More on tables in a minute here, because naturally R Markdown is going to provide us some functionalities for those based on your actual data. But let's take a look at what all this stuff looked like. So we've got our equation here, E equals M times C squared. That chunk of code that I wanted to evaluate in line did actually evaluate. For example, the mean is 146.6875. That sure beats actually writing this manually and then making mistakes later when you forget to change something. So then we've got a list can be created, like we've got a little bullet, and then these sub bullets, or 1, 2, and then the following sub bullets there. And alternatively, a table can be created like this. Now you'll see that this actual table has been created here. But next, what we're actually going to look at is actually using this cable function. So I'm going to run the chunk of code at line 90 here, just to give you an idea of what this looks like. Run the head function of empty cars, and you have an outputted tibble. However, R Markdown gives us this helpful function cable. And so I'm going to wrap the cable function around exactly the line of code that I called before. I'm going to run that and see what that looks like instead. See, notice you get this nicely formatted table here instead. Actually, here, it might not necessarily look as good, but if we go to the actual output, notice it actually looks significantly better. Now, there's a lot that can go behind formatting these tables for outputting, and that's the subject for its own tutorial, but there's a lot of super helpful packages such as Cable Extra, Pander, Format Table that are going to make that super easy for you. So you may be left thinking now, okay, this is awesome, but how in the world am I going to memorize all this? Well, the nice thing about R Markdown is you really don't have to memorize pretty much anything, because basically all of it is on the cheat sheet. So that's the next thing that we're going to look at. Now, this is an incredibly easy to use cheat sheet that luckily has all the information that you're going to want all in one spot. It's very comprehensive. So if we start on the left side here with open file, this is how you'll get started in the first place. If you go to the top under file, then new file, then R Markdown, it's going to allow you to set your YAML header right up, so you can plug your title, your author right in, and then similarly, you can set your output. Now, HTML is the default, but you can also do PDF or Word. Then you'll be all ready to go. Basically, all of the Markdown that I showed you can be found right here as a reference. There's a few things I left out because I don't personally use them as much, but any of the syntax that you would want can be found here. You can choose your actual output inside of the YAML header. And now, it doesn't even necessarily need to be a document. It could be a Beamer slideshow or an IO slides presentation. It's very customizable. Going down to number 5 here, it will walk you through embedding code. So with the inline code or the code chunks, as I showed you before, then you've got these display options here with eval equals false and then echo equals false. Now, the options are actually one thing that I really want to highlight, because this is not something I went through quite as much inside the document here, but these are options that you can set up either to the code chunk or globally. Now, you'll notice I actually do a few things globally where right up front, I have this chunk of code where I do knitter opt chunk set warning equals false, comma, message equals false. What that's basically saying is for every single chunk of code, warning equals false and message equals false. It's just a lot more compact than just writing warning equals false and message equals false every time here. But we have a variety of options. There's eval for whether to evaluate the code and include its results. Echo is whether to display code along with its results, so on and so forth. I don't like to display warnings or messages, and the defaults to those things are true. So up front, I just change those things to false. So those are your options. Then you can render up here by, at the top of your header here, just go to knit. You can set knit HTML, knit PDF, or knit Word, and then you're good to go. As long as there's no problems inside of your code that just don't make any sense and just throw errors, you're going to have a proper knitted output that you can then go back and change or share with whomever you need to share it with. Now, there are a number of options here for interactive documents as well as publishing to various sites. Those are subjects for other tutorials, particularly with interactive docs. But when I do a tutorial on Shiny in the near future here, you're going to learn how to do all of that stuff as well. So that about covers it for R Markdown. Again, really get used to working in R Markdown, because if you share documents like this, I'm telling you, your stakeholders, your clients, or the people that you're working with internally, they're absolutely going to love this. Put a little bit of work, depending on your personal preferences and just the standards that you have to live up to, into making this look nice. But it's so nice just to be able to have all the code as well as your commentary and your output all in one location so it tells a story. So I'm going to leave you there. Thanks all for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, again, hit the like button or consider sharing this video. Then I'll see you all in the not so distant future. Until then, Richard, on data.